The alarm on the star station Veil threshold had only 3 settings: green for calm, amber for caution, and red, which no one alive had ever seen turned on. On the day the human ship arrived, all 3 colors flashed at once. Deep in the control ring, a small alien named Sesk pressed 4 thin hands against the glass and stopped breathing. Sesk belonged to the Alui, a soft-bodied people who looked like pale jellyfish-grown legs and worry. Their whole species had one great skill. They could smell danger in the air of space itself, the way a fish feels a storm coming through the water. And right now, Sesk smelled something that did not belong. "Report," said Warden Olin, the station's commander. He was Alui too, but old, his skin gone gray at the edges. He did not press his hands to the glass. He had learned long ago that pressing your hands against glass never changed what was on the other side. "A ship," Sesk whispered. "One ship. It came out of the dark without a beacon. It has no war flags. It has no fleet." "Then why," Olin said quietly, "are all 3 lights on?" Sesk turned. Their large black eyes were wet with fear. "Because," Sesk said, "the ship is small, and I am terrified." The ship's name was the Wanderer's Hope, though no alien on the station could read the letters painted on her side. She was old the way a good boot is old. Scarred, patched, dented in 100 places, and clearly still working. She drifted toward the station with her engines cold, sending a single simple message on every channel at once. The message was 3 words long. "We come peaceful." In the docking bay, 40 station guards raised their weapons. The guards were Threk, a tall reptile people with skin like polished bronze and a deep pride in their own strength. The Threk were the muscle of this whole region of space. They had teeth. They had claws. They had guns that could melt a hole through a moon. They pointed all of it at one open airlock. And out of the airlock stepped a single human. He was not tall. He was not armored. He wore a faded jacket, boots that had walked a lot of miles, and a beard he clearly trimmed with whatever was sharp and nearby. He raised both empty hands and smiled at the wall of guns like a man smiling at a sunrise. "Hi," he said. "Name's Kale. Kale Ferris. Are you the welcome party or the firing squad? Because you all look real serious for both." Nobody laughed. The Threk did not understand human jokes yet. They would learn. Warden Olin floated forward on his soft legs, small and gray beside the towering guards. He studied the human for a long moment. "You are the first of your kind we have seen," Olin said through the station's translator. "We did not know your species existed until 3 days ago, when a scout heard your radio noise leaking across the border. You are very far from your home." "Yeah," Kale said. "We tend to do that." "Do what?" "Wander." Kale looked around the docking bay, at the glowing panels and the strange writing and the towering bronze guards, and his eyes lit up like a kid at a fair. "Wow, this is beautiful. Did you build all this?" Olin's tentacles curled in surprise. In all his years, no visitor had ever called his station beautiful. Feared, yes. Envied, sometimes. But never beautiful. "You should be more careful," Olin said slowly. "You have arrived at the edge of the Threk Dominion. This is not a safe place for the weak." Kale nodded, still smiling. "We hear that a lot too." They gave him a room, because they did not know what else to do with him. That night, in the station's high council chamber, the arguing began. The chamber was a great dome of dark blue crystal. Above it, through the glass, the stars burned cold and endless. Around a low table sat the leaders of the 3 peoples who shared this stretch of space. There were the Alui, small and soft and frightened. There were the Threk, huge and proud. And there was one member of a 3rd species, the Voss, who ruled everything the light touched. The Voss counselor was named Iravon. The Voss were the true masters of the galaxy's core. They were beings of living metal and cold thought, 7 feet tall, faceless, their heads smooth silver mirrors that showed you only your own reflection when you looked at them. They had ruled 10,000 worlds for 10,000 years. They did this through one simple rule, and the rule was this. They ranked every species by danger, and the ranking never changed. The most dangerous known species in all the galaxy were called apex predators. There were only 4 of them recorded in 10,000 years of history. To be named an apex predator was to be feared by everyone, forever. It was the highest and most terrible title the Voss could give. "The human," said Iravon, and his voice was a hum of many tones at once, "must be measured. That is the law. Every new species is measured. We assign them a rank, and the rank tells all the galaxy how to treat them." "He is one man in a broken ship," said the Threk warlord, whose name was Karvek. Karvek was the largest Threk anyone had ever seen, and he had never lost a fight. "Measure him at the bottom. Pray. Then we take his ship for scrap and move on. I have a war to plan." "And yet," said little Sesk, who was allowed to speak because they could smell what others could not, "when he arrived, I could not breathe. My whole body screamed danger, and I do not know why." The Threk warlord laughed, a sound like grinding rocks. "You are Alui," Karvek said. "You are afraid of your own shadow." "Yes," Sesk agreed softly, "and my shadow has never once been wrong." Iravon lifted one silver hand. The room went quiet. "We will do what we always do," the Voss said. "We will test him. 3 trials. Mind, body, and heart. And then we will know his rank, and the matter will be closed." Nobody argued with the Voss. Nobody ever did. But Sesk, in the corner, kept smelling the storm. The first trial was mind. They brought Kale to a room full of puzzles, glowing shapes floating in the air, meant to test how a creature thinks. The Voss watched from behind mirrored walls. This test had broken proud species before. Some solved it in hours. Some never solved it at all. Kale looked at the floating shapes. Then he looked at the mirror where he knew they were watching. "Is this a test?" he asked. No one answered. That was the rule. Kale scratched his beard. He picked up 2 of the shapes, turned them over, and set them down. He picked up a third. He frowned. He sat down on the floor. For an hour, he barely moved. The Threk warlord, watching, began to laugh again. "Pray," Karvek said. "See? His mind is slow. He is stuck." But Sesk was watching Kale's eyes. And Kale's eyes were not stuck. They were moving. Fast. Back and forth across every shape, every angle, every corner of the room. Then Kale stood up. He did not solve the puzzle the way it was meant to be solved. Instead, he walked to the corner of the room, found the small seam where the wall met the floor, and pulled out a single loose panel. Behind it were the wires that powered the whole test. He looked at them. Then he reached in, moved 2 wires, and every floating shape in the room snapped instantly into the correct answer. He turned to the mirror and shrugged. "You didn't say I had to play fair," he said. "You just said solve it." Behind the glass, the Voss counselor Iravon stood very still. The puzzle had never been solved that way before, in 10,000 years. "That is cheating," said the warlord. "That," said Sesk quietly, "is a predator finding the fastest way to the kill." The second trial was body. They put Kale in a fighting ring, and against him they sent a Threk warrior. Not the warlord. A younger one, but still a giant, 7 feet of bronze muscle with claws that could open steel. The Threk had chosen fighting as their test because they were sure of the answer. Humans looked soft, weak. No claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. Just skin. The whole station gathered to watch. They expected it to be short. They were right. It was short. The Threk warrior charged. Kale did not charge back. He waited, calm, weight low, and when the giant swung a claw that would have taken his head off, Kale simply was not there anymore. He had stepped aside a hand's width, no more, so that the claw passed close enough to stir his hair. The Threk stumbled, and in that half-second, Kale did something no one in the ring had ever seen. He kept fighting when the fight was already over. The Threk had thrown one attack. In their culture, one attack was a test. You threw, you watched, you circled, you threw again. There were rules to it. There was rhythm. There was honor. Kale had no rhythm. He grabbed the Threk's outstretched arm, twisted his whole body into it, and used the giant's own weight to slam him face first into the floor. Then, when the Threk tried to rise, Kale did not let him. He did not pause. He did not circle. He did not offer a chance to recover. He put a knee on the giant's spine and held. The Threk warrior, who outweighed him 5 times over, could not move. Yield, Kale said quietly. The Threk warlord Karvek was on his feet. His voice shook the room. That is not how we fight. You do not stop. You do not circle. You give no chance to rise. Kale looked up at him, still holding the giant down, and for the first time his easy smile was gone. What replaced it was something older, something patient, something that made even the warlord go quiet. Where I'm from, Kale said, if you give something a chance to rise, it kills your family. He let the warrior go. He stood. He offered the Threk his hand to help him up. The Threk did not take it. He stared at the human's open hand as if it were a trap. In the crowd, Sesk was shaking so hard they had to sit down. Because Sesk finally understood one small piece of the storm. The humans did not fight for honor. They fought to survive. And a thing that fights to survive does not know how to stop. That night, Kale could not sleep, so he went walking. He found Sesk alone in the observation ring, the little All-You-E pressed against the great window, watching the stars. You're the one who's scared of me, Kale said, sitting down beside them. Not too close. He'd noticed the small alien flinched when anyone came close. I can tell. You look at me like I'm a storm cloud. Sesk did not lie. The All-You-E were bad at lying. You are, Sesk said. I do not know why, but my whole body knows it. When you came out of that airlock, I smelled a thing I have only smelled twice in my life. Yeah? What's that? Sesk turned their big, wet eyes to him. The last time I smelled it, Sesk whispered, an apex predator had come to our system. It was one of the Kelth. They are the 4th apex, the youngest, the cruelest. They came to our world, and they ate half of it. Not for food. For sport. My family was in the half they ate. Kale said nothing. He just listened. That, too, was a human thing, though Sesk did not know it yet. Humans knew how to sit inside another creature's grief without trying to fix it. And now, Sesk went on, you come out of a broken little ship, one man, no army, no weapon I can see. And I smell the same thing I smelled the day my family died. The little alien's voice broke. So tell me, human, what are you? Really? Kale looked out at the stars for a long time. I'm tired, he finally said. That's the honest answer. My people have been running for a very long time. We're looking for somewhere quiet. Somewhere safe. That's all we've ever wanted. Running from what? And here Kale's face changed. Just for a moment. The mask slipped, and underneath it Sesk saw something vast and dark and full of ghosts. From what we used to be, Kale said. Then he smiled again, and the mask was back, and he stood and said goodnight. But Sesk stayed at the window a long time after he was gone, because that answer had told them nothing. And everything. The third trial was hard. The Voss believed that the true measure of a species was not its mind or its body, but what it would sacrifice, and for whom. So they built a cruel test. They took Kale to a room where 2 doors stood side by side. Behind one door, they told him, was his own ship, his only way home, his crew's only chance to survive. Behind the other door was a stranger, a creature Kale had never met, of a species he did not know, trapped and slowly dying. He could open only one door before the room sealed. His ship and safety and home, or a stranger's life. Choose, said the Voss. Kale stood between the two doors, and the whole council watched, because this test had revealed the truth of 100 species. The strong ones chose the ship. The wise ones chose the ship. Even the kind ones, in the end, chose the ship. Because a ship was your people, and a stranger was only a stranger. Kale walked to the second door, the stranger's door. The Threk warlord leaned forward, confused. He does not even know what is behind it. It could be a monster. It could be a trick. It is a trick, said Iravon quietly. It is always a trick. Behind that door is nothing. An empty room. We wish to see if he will throw away his own survival for a stranger who does not even exist. If he chooses the stranger's door, it proves he is a fool. Fools are ranked as prey. But Kale did not open the stranger's door. He put his ear against it first. He listened. Then he stepped back, and he looked at the mirror where he knew they watched. There's nobody behind this door, Kale said. I can hear that the room's empty. No breathing. No heartbeat. Nothing. Silence behind the glass. So this whole thing's a test of whether I'd die for a stranger, Kale went on. And you set it up so the right answer costs me everything and helps nobody. He shook his head. That's not a test of heart. That's a test of whether I'm stupid. He walked back to the middle of the room. Here's the thing you got wrong, Kale said. You think heart means throwing your life away. It doesn't. Heart means you'd give everything for your people, but you're smart enough to know when someone's using that against you. He crossed his arms. I'd die for a real stranger who was really dying. In a heartbeat. But I'm not going to die for a con. My crew needs me alive too much for that. Then he did the last thing anyone expected. He walked to the door with his ship behind it. But he did not open it. He turned the handle, checked that it worked, and let it go. I'm not leaving either, he said. Not yet. You've got a whole station full of scared people and one warlord who wants a war. I've seen where that road goes. I've walked it. So I'll stay. And I'll help. Not because you tested me right. Because it's the right thing to do. Behind the glass, the Voss counselor Iravon did not move for a very long time. He had run this test 10,000 times, on 1,000 species, across 10,000 years. No one had ever seen through it. That evening, the council met again, and this time no one laughed. He is not prey, Sesk said. You all felt it. You saw it. He is one man, the warlord Karvek insisted, but even his voice had lost its certainty. One man is not a species. Perhaps he is the strongest of them. Perhaps the rest are soft. Perhaps, Iravon agreed. The silver Voss stood at the head of the table, and his mirror face showed each of them their own worried reflection, which is why the law requires more than one subject. We cannot rank a species on one man. We must see his people. Then let us see them, said the warlord, and something dark moved under his words. Let us find their world. Let us go and look. Sesk felt the storm smell grow stronger. That is not looking, Sesk said. That is hunting. Karvek turned his bronze eyes on the little Alui. Everything is hunting, the warlord said. You are simply too soft to admit it. Here is the truth about the Threk warlord Karvek, the truth he told no one. He was afraid. For 100 years the Threk had been the muscle of this region, the enforcers, the strong right hand of the Voss. It was the only thing they were. It was the only thing that made them matter. And the warlord had seen, in one fighting ring, a soft pink creature with no claws take down a Threk warrior in 4 seconds. If the humans were all like that, then the Threk were not the strongest anymore. And if the Threk were not the strongest, then they were nothing. So Karvek decided, in the private dark of his own fear, that the humans had to be crushed before anyone learned how dangerous they were. Before the galaxy learned that there was something stronger than the Threk. He did not tell the council this. He told them he wanted to study the human homeworld. He took 40 warships and left in the night. Kale found out at dawn. Sesk came to his room, shaking, and told him everything. The 40 ships, the warlord's fear, the course set for the faint radio trail that had led the Voss to Kale in the first place. A trail that led, eventually, back toward the edge of human space. Kale listened. He did not shout. He did not panic. He got very, very quiet, and Sesk found that far more frightening than shouting. How fast are those ships? Kale asked. Faster than yours, Sesk said. You cannot catch them. How long till they reach human space? 9 days. Kale nodded slowly. He walked to his window and looked out at the stars, and his jaw was tight, and his hands were still. My people aren't ready for 40 warships, he said. Not yet. We came out here to avoid this. To find somewhere quiet. He closed his eyes. If 40 Threk warships show up shooting, my people will do what we always do when something tries to wipe us out. What is that? Sesk whispered. Kale opened his eyes. We'll win, he said. And then we won't stop. That's the part I'm scared of. Not that we'll lose. That we'll win, and then keep going, and burn this whole beautiful part of the galaxy down to ash. Because that's the thing about us, Sesk. Once we start, we don't know how to stop. He turned from the window. I have to get to that warlord before he fires a single shot. Because after the first shot, there's no stopping any of it. They could not catch the Threk fleet. But there was another way. The Voss Counselor Iravon had a ship. A courier vessel, faster than anything the Threk owned, built to carry the will of the Voss across 10,000 worlds in the blink of an eye. And Iravon, who had watched a human see through a test that had fooled the galaxy for 10,000 years, was curious. Curiosity is a dangerous thing in an immortal. I will take you, Iravon said. Not to help you. To watch. I still do not know your rank, human. Perhaps this is how I will learn it. You want a front row seat, Kale said. To find out how dangerous we really are. Yes. You might not like the answer. That, said the Voss, is exactly why I must know it. Sesk insisted on coming. When the warlord asked why, the little Alui said only, because someone on this ship should be afraid, and it will not be either of you. They flew. The Voss courier caught the Threk fleet on the 6th day, at the very edge of human space, in the shadow of a dead red star. They arrived to find the warlord already there. Already waiting, and already looking at something that had stopped him cold, because the humans had known they were coming. Hanging in the dark before the Threk fleet was a single human ship, not a warship, not armed. It was a battered old freighter, much like Kale's, and it sat directly in the fleet's path, engines cold, doing nothing but blocking the way. On every channel, it played one message. Please turn around. We don't want to fight you. Please, turn around. The warlord's voice came over the comms, thick with contempt. They send one unarmed ship to beg. This is your mighty predator species, human? This is what I was afraid of. He laughed his grinding rock laugh. Pray. All of you. Pray. Karvek, Kale said, cutting into the channel. Listen to me. That ship isn't begging. It's warning you. There's a difference. Please. I'm asking you as one soldier to another. Turn your fleet around. Or what? Kale was quiet for a moment. Or you'll find out why my people were the last ones standing, he said, on a world that tried very hard to kill us all. The warlord fired. One shot, a single lance of burning light, meant to vaporize the little unarmed freighter, meant to prove to the whole galaxy that the humans were nothing, that the Threk were still the strongest, that Karvek's fear was foolish and small. The shot never reached the freighter. Something stopped it, something in the dark that no one had seen. The burning lance struck an invisible wall 100 miles from the human ship and simply died, its light swallowed, its energy gone. And then, all across the empty dark between the two fleets, the space began to shimmer. They had not sent one ship. They had sent one ship they could see. Around it, rising out of the dark where they had waited silent and cold, came the rest of the human fleet. Not 40 ships, not 400. The dark was full of them, more than Cesc could count. Ships shaped like nothing the galaxy had ever built, black and quiet and studded with weapons that had never fired because their crews had prayed, every day, that they would never have to. The humans had not come to this quiet corner of the galaxy alone and weak. They had come with everything they had left. And they had been hiding and watching and waiting from the very first day Kale walked out of that airlock with his hands up and a smile on his face. The Threk fleet stopped. On the courier ship, Cesc made a small sound of pure terror. The Voss counselor Iravon stood at the window, his silver body utterly still, his mirror face showing the reflection of 1,000 human ships. How, Iravon said. It was not really a question. How many are there? Enough, Kale said quietly. Not because we're mighty. Because we ran here. All of us. Everyone we had left. This is the whole of us, Iravon. Every human alive is on those ships, or on the world behind them. We came to the edge of the map because we thought the edge of the map might finally be far enough. He looked at the Voss. You wanted to know our rank, Kale said. You wanted to know how dangerous we are. So let me tell you the thing we've never told anybody. The reason we ran. The reason we hide. He turned back to the window, to the endless silent fleet. We didn't come from a peaceful world, he said. We came from a world that spent 100,000 years trying to kill us. Everything on it was made to eat us. And we didn't have claws, or armor, or venom, or wings. We had nothing. So we learned the one thing that let us live. His voice dropped. We learned to win anyway. Against things bigger than us. Stronger than us. Faster than us. We learned to be the thing that never quits, and never forgets, and never, ever stops until the threat is gone. We turned a whole planet of monsters into pets and dinner. Every single one. Cesc was shaking so hard they could barely stand. And then, Kale said, we did it to each other. The bridge went silent. That's the secret, Kale said. That's what we run from. Not other species. Ourselves. We're so good at winning that when we ran out of monsters to fight, we started fighting each other. We nearly wiped ourselves out. What you see out there, he gestured at the fleet. That's not our army. That's the survivors. That's everyone who was left after we almost did to ourselves what your apex predators do to whole worlds. He looked at the warlord's ship, hanging frozen in the dark. So please, Kale said, and his voice cracked. Please turn around, Karvek. Because if you fire again, you'll teach us the one lesson we've spent 100 years trying to unlearn. You'll remind us how good we are at killing. And I don't think this part of the galaxy would survive us remembering. The warlord Karvek stared out at the impossible fleet, and inside his proud bronze heart, his old fear turned into a new and terrible one. He had come to prove the Threk were still the strongest. Instead, he had found a species that had already been the strongest on a whole world, against every monster nature could invent, and had won so completely that the only enemy left worthy of them was themselves. He should have turned around. But fear does terrible things to proud creatures. Lies, Karvek said, and his voice shook. Tricks and lies. It is a hologram. A bluff. No species survives a world that hunts it. No species turns on itself and lives. He gripped his command chair. I am Karvek. I have never lost. I will not be frightened by ghosts and light. Karvek, don't, Kale started. The warlord gave the order to fire everything. 40 Threk warships opened up at once. The dark between the fleets lit up like a second dawn, a wall of fire and light roaring toward the silent human ships. And the humans did the last thing anyone expected. They opened a hole in their own line and let the fire pass through. Not one Threk shot hit a human ship. The humans had moved, all of them, in the same half-second, in perfect silence, the way Kale had stepped a hand's width aside from the Threk's claw in the fighting ring. They did not shoot back. They flowed around the attack like water around a stone, closed their line again behind it, and hung there in the dark, still silent, still waiting. They had taken the warlord's best blow, and they had not fired once. Why aren't they shooting? Sesk whispered. Because they're begging him to stop, Kale said, and his eyes were wet. That's the last mercy. My people took his shot and didn't answer it. In our whole bloody history, that's the kindest thing we know how to do. It means, we could kill you, and we're choosing not to. Yet, on the warlord's ship, a young Threk officer looked at his commander with wide, frightened eyes. Warlord, the officer said. They dodged 40 ships firing at once. In perfect silence. Without a signal we could hear. That is not a bluff. That is, he swallowed. We cannot win this. Karvek knew it too. He had known it the moment the fire passed through the empty hole in their line. He was beaten, utterly, by an enemy who had not fired a single shot. And a proud creature, beaten and afraid, is the most dangerous thing in any galaxy. Because Karvek did the unforgivable. He turned his ships, not toward home, toward the human world behind the fleet, the undefended one, the nursery world where the children were. If he could not beat their fleet, he would burn what the fleet was protecting. He's going for the planet, Kale breathed. Iravon, he's going for the planet. What happened next took 4 minutes, and the galaxy would tell the story of it for 10,000 years. The human fleet moved to block him, but the warlord's ships were faster, built for speed, and they tore through toward the blue-green world beyond, engines screaming. On that world were 3 million humans. Farmers, children, the old and the young, the ones who had survived everything and had finally found somewhere quiet. The humans could not catch the Threk ships in time, but one ship could. The Voss courier was faster than anything the Threk owned. Iravon knew it. Kale knew it. And in that moment, Kale did the math no soldier ever wants to do. Iravon, Kale said, your ship's faster. You can get between them and the planet. And be destroyed, the Voss said calmly. One courier against 40 warships. We would last seconds. Seconds is all my fleet needs to catch up. The Voss counselor turned his mirror face to the human. And in the mirror, Kale saw his own reflection, tired and grim and asking a stranger to die. You want me to sacrifice myself, Iravon said, for 3 million of your people, strangers to me, of a species I have not even ranked. Yes. Kale did not soften it. Humans, at the end, did not soften the hard things. I'm asking you to die for people you don't know, and I know I have no right to ask it. There was a long silence. Then, to everyone's shock, it was Sesk who spoke. I will not let him ask you alone, the little Alui said, and stood up straight for the first time in their whole frightened life. Iravon, when the Kelth came to my world, they ate my family, and no one came. No one stood between us and the monster. I have spent my whole life smelling danger and running from it. Their wet black eyes shone. For once, let me smell danger and run toward it. Let me be the one who came. The Voss counselor looked from the human to the Alui, and something moved in that ancient, immortal mind that had ranked 10,000 species and felt nothing for any of them. In 10,000 years, Iravon said slowly, I have measured every species by how dangerous they are. That was the law. That was the only question worth asking. His voice changed, softened, became something almost human. I begin to think I have been asking the wrong question all along. He turned the courier ship toward the warlord's fleet. Full speed, Iravon said. Put us between the children and the guns. The courier ship threw itself across the dark. It was small and old-fashioned by Voss standards, but it was fast, faster than fear, faster than fire, and it slid into the gap between the Threk fleet and the blue-green world with barely a second to spare. 40 warships found their path to the planet blocked by one tiny vessel, glittering silver, refusing to move. "Get out of the way," the warlord roared. "You are Voss. You do not die for prey." "They are not prey," Iravon answered. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the ranking was gone from his voice, and in its place was something that had never once colored the words of the Voss. "Respect. Warlord Karvek. I have measured your kind, and I have measured theirs. And I tell you now, with the full authority of the Voss Dominion, you will not pass." The warlord fired. The courier ship burned. But it held. For 4 seconds, it held, taking every shot, its shield screaming, its hull tearing open, and inside it Sesk pressed 4 small hands against the glass one last time and did not close their eyes. And Kale, wounded, dragging himself toward the escape pod, he was shoving them both toward, shouted their names, and the ship came apart around them. And the human fleet arrived. They came out of the dark not silent anymore, but singing. Every ship in the human fleet had turned on its outer lights and its every broadcast channel, and across all of them at once played the same sound. Not a battle cry, not a threat, a song. An old, sad, human song about coming home, sung by 3 million voices from the world below and 10,000 more from the ships above, because the humans had learned something in their long and bloody history that no other species knew. That the most terrifying thing in the universe is not a monster that roars. It is a monster that sings while it comes for you. The human fleet did not fire either. They surrounded the 40 Threk warships completely, so close their hulls nearly touched, so close the Threk could see the human faces in the windows, and they simply held there, singing, weapons cold, giving the warlord one last chance to choose. "Kill us," the humans were saying, "and learn what we are. Or stop." And Karvek, surrounded, beaten, his fear finally larger than his pride, looked at the 10,000 ships that could have destroyed him 100 times over and had chosen, instead, to sing. And he powered down his guns. The war was over before it began. It ended not with a human victory, but with a human mercy, which, Iravon would think later, in the long years he had left, was the most terrifying victory of all. They pulled 2 escape pods from the wreckage of the courier ship. In one was Kale, broken and burned but breathing. In the other was Iravon, his silver body cracked and dimmed but somehow, impossibly, still alive. The Voss were hard to kill, harder even than they let the galaxy know. The third pod was empty. Sesk had shoved Kale into the first pod and Iravon into the second, and there had not been time for a third, and the little Alui who had spent their whole life running from danger had, in the last 4 seconds, chosen to stay behind and hold the launch controls with their own 4 hands so the pods would fire. They found nobody. The Alui are soft, and space is unkind. But they found, in the pod that carried Kale, a message Sesk had scratched into the wall with a trembling hand in their final seconds. It said, "I finally understand what you are. You are not the most dangerous. You are the ones who taught me to be brave." Kale read it in the medical bay, and the strongest survivor of the deadliest species in the galaxy put his face in his hands and wept like a child. The galaxy changed after that. The Voss held their great council, and Iravon rose before them, his cracked silver body a testament to what he had seen, and he did a thing no Voss had done in 10,000 years. He proposed they abolish the ranking. For 10,000 years, Iravon told the council, we have measured every species by one question. How dangerous are you? We named the 4 most dangerous the apex predators, and we feared them, and we shaped all our law around that fear." He paused. "I have met a species more dangerous than all 4 apex predators combined. I have watched them take 40 warships firing at once and answer with a song. I have watched them send their whole surviving people to the edge of the map, not to conquer, but to hide, because they were more afraid of what they could do than of anything that could be done to them." The council was silent. "And I have learned," Irovan said, "that the question we spent 10,000 years asking was the wrong one. The question is not how dangerous a species is. Any fool can be dangerous. The only question that has ever mattered, is what a species chooses to do with the danger it carries." His voice dropped. "The humans could have burned us all. They chose mercy instead. A small Alui who had smelled fear its whole life chose to fly toward the fire. That is not a thing you can measure on a scale of danger. That is a thing you can only measure on a scale we never thought to build." And so the ranking was abolished. And in its place, the Voss began, slowly, painfully, to build a new one. Not a ranking of danger, a ranking of what you did with it. By the new measure, the humans ranked first. Not because they were the strongest, though they were, but because they were the strongest and had chosen to sing instead of burn. Warlord Karvek was not executed. The humans asked for his life. Everyone expected they would want him dead. He had tried to burn their children's world, after all. But Kale stood before the council, still limping, and asked for something stranger. He asked that Karvek be sent to live among the humans for 1 year. "Why?" the warlord demanded, ashamed and confused. "You should want me dead." "I did," Kale admitted. "For about a day. Then I remembered something." He looked at the huge, proud, broken Threk. "You didn't attack us because you were evil. You attacked us because you were afraid. Afraid you weren't the strongest anymore. Afraid that if you weren't strong, you were nothing." Kale's voice was gentle. "I know that fear, Karvek. My whole species knows it. It's the fear that nearly killed us all. And the only thing that ever cured it wasn't winning. It was learning that we could be more than the strongest thing in the room." He held out his hand, the same hand he'd offered in the fighting ring. "Come live with us for a year," Kale said. "Let me show you what we found on the other side of that fear. And then decide who you want to be." This time, the warlord took his hand. "There is one more thing to tell." A year later, on the quiet blue-green world at the edge of the map, they built a small stone marker on a hill above the sea. It was not grand. The humans do not build grand things for their dead. They build small, true things, and they visit them. On the marker was a name in the human tongue, and beneath it a name in the flowing script of the Alui, and beneath that a symbol in the mirror language of the Voss. 3 peoples, on one small stone. The name was Sesk, and carved beneath all 3 languages, in the plain simple words that the humans used for the things they meant most, was this: Asterisk, here we remember the one who was afraid every day of their life, and flew toward the fire anyway. They taught the strongest species in the galaxy the only lesson we could not teach ourselves, that the bravest thing is not to feel no fear. It is to feel all of it, and go. Asterisk. The warlord Karvek came to that hill often, in the year he lived among them, and then in the many years after, when he chose to stay. He would stand before the small stone, this giant bronze creature who had never lost a fight, and he would be quiet for a long time. And once, an old Voss counselor with a cracked silver body came and stood beside him, and the 2 former enemies watched the human sea roll in against the shore, under a sky full of the stars that the humans had crossed to get here, running from monsters, running from themselves, and finding at last, at the very edge of the map, something none of them had ever expected to find. Not safety. There is no safety, anywhere, for anyone, but a reason to sing instead of burn. And far above them, in the dark between the stars, the human fleet drifted in peace at last, 10,000 ships that could have ended worlds, their weapons cold, their lights soft and gold, keeping watch over the small quiet world below the way a tired parent keeps watch over a sleeping child. Fierce and gentle, and finally, after 100,000 years, at rest. The little Auyui had asked Kale, on their first night, "What are you, really?" He never got to give them the true answer. But if he could have, standing now on that hill beside the sea, with a former enemy on his left and an immortal on his right, and the stone with 3 languages before him, and the whole aching, singing, unstoppable weight of his people at his back, he would have said this: "We are the ones who could have burned the whole galaxy down, and chose to light it instead."